A very good evening and welcome. You're watching the India Development Debate. I'm Tamanna Inamdar. Our focus, though, this evening is going to be on what's happening in Russia and with Mr. Putin. Now, much ink was spilled over the weekend as Wagner mercenaries marched towards Moscow. From Kyiv to London and from Paris to Washington, experts couldn't contain their excitement as Putin's ally, Yevgeny Prigozhin, turned on him. Security in Moscow was tightened, and the news of Wagner mercenaries, considered to be an extension of Putin's government, started taking over key military sites and the city of Rostov On Don. That made matters worse for Putin. Indeed, for a few hours, it looked like Russia could descend into civil war. But that didn't happen. Putin made a television appearance and termed the rebel Wagner leader, Prigozhin, a traitor, vowing the harshest of punishment for the mutineers. Within 24 hours, though, a deal was struck and Prigozhin agreed to a life in exile in Belarus. In the latest, he's just issued a new statement in which he says that he didn't want to displace the government in Moscow, but wanted to expose the security weaknesses of the Russian system. Now, in return, Putin had to swallow his pride, promised to drop all charges against the Wagner group. The rebel leader's whereabouts, like I said, are unknown. There's some assuming that he's in Belarus, but Putin's foreign minister says they will continue to operate, and this is important, in Mali and Central African Republic. That's another climb down, clearly, for Putin. But here's the twist. Russia's defense minister, Sergei Shoigu, today made an appearance on TV in a clear message that he's not going anywhere. Remember, his removal was one of the key demands of the mutineers. Also, Russia's prime minister has called on people to stay united behind Putin. NATO maintains the aborted mutiny revealed Russia's strategic mistakes, but UK's army chief, General Sanders, has said he should never write off Moscow. Now, in the middle of all of this, a few key questions we need to answer this evening. Is this the end of the challenge to Vladimir Putin? If not, what does it mean? And is an unstable Russia seriously more dangerous to the world than one with Putin at the helm? To speak on some of these issues, I'm joined by Manoj, Joshi, Distinguished Fellow ORF, Probal Dasgupta, Advisor at Birdstone GeoEconomics, Anil Trigunayat, former ambassador, and Suresh, Goel, former ambassador, joining us on the show. Welcome to all of you, and thank you so much for speaking with us today on the India Development Debate. Ambassador Trigunayat, let me begin with your take on what we've seen in the last couple of days, and has it ended? I mean, you've had a statement from the Wagner head as recently as about 15-20 minutes ago.
Well, I don't think it has gone away because there are many theories doing the round that there could be conspiracy theories also, because the clarity on this whole thing is yet to emerge exactly what transpired. Because Prigozhin is also basically nurtured by Putin himself, and he was a close not a friend, I would say, but a close partner of Putin. And with his behest, he has done whatever he has. And the thing is that Prigozhin has everywhere done a great job. I mean, in terms of achieving success on the front. When offensive was required, they were there in Crimea, they were there at the Bakhmut and Mariupol and other places, and also in Africa, in different countries, Middle East and Africa. So he thought probably that he has arrived now, and maybe this one theory is that the foreign intelligence and Ukrainians and some others and somebody in the Kremlin, as well as some other oligarchs who were against Putin, have tried to bait him into it. Second, the more plausible theory that is there, and which Putin, being a strategist himself, is that it was to redeploy these forces in Belarus, which is becoming increasingly a front against the NATO and the West, and that to put pressure on entry through Kyiv, where these forces are now, where Prigozhin is in basically exile. And the third one is essentially that just to eventually eliminate him any risk. But in this whole thing, overtly, President Putin's prestige has been further damaged. It looks that there are really chinks in his armor, and those he'll have to address. And I think that we might be seeing. And third thing that we need to wonder is whether Putin has not been exactly happy with the progress made by the army under General Shoigu and his current Chief of General Staff, General Gerasimov, whose removal Prigozhin has been asking. He's been talking about the corruption and all kinds of things. So whether it is also a prelude eventually to the removal of Shoigu and Gerasimov in whichever way. So there are a lot of ifs and buts there. There are a lot of things are opening up, but for the time being, there is a temporary respite. So we'll have to just wait for a few more days and see how things evolve.
What's astonishing and continues to be astonishing more than anything else is the impunity or the perceived impunity of such an open challenge to Putin. I'm coming to Ambassador Suresh Goel on this. They walked in the latest statement. The Wagner chief says that we were welcomed everywhere we went by locals. They have captured some military equipment, etc. One major city in Russia. One wonders, with 25, 30,000 people, how is this group of mercenaries managing this? There seems to be more to the story.
Absolutely. Tamanna, is that it? Tamanna, if I can, and if I have time, there is a joke doing rounds on the WhatsApp groups where there is a conversation between CIA and Prigozhin, and they say, hey, Prim, we will pay you billions of dollars if you march on to Moscow and capture Putin, kill him or capture him. And we'll give you billions of dollars, half now and half later on. So he said, all right, I'm on. He gives a call to Putin to find out what he should do. And Putin tells him, take half, come to Moscow and bring the vodka alone. These are things really where you don't know what actually is happening. And frankly, the alliance between Putin and Prigozhin is so strong. It would be difficult to believe that he would do anything without really thinking of long-term consequences. Anything that could actually break the Russian security. So what I think really, I really don't know. Maybe there was a plot, maybe there was not a plot, maybe he got enticed by the CIA, maybe he did not, maybe he wanted to march on. But the fact is that at the end of it, in terms of the overall security scenario, he realizes that he cannot live away from Russia. On the very first day, there was a call from one channel, and I told them that the way it is going on, you do not know whether this is a hoax or this is reality or whatever it is. But the fact is that either way, both Wagner and Russia depend upon each other. It is impossible to believe that one can live without the other. Putin created Wagner. Wagner supported Putin. So either way, whichever way it is, whether they have reconfigured, they're going to Belarus, the fact is that at the moment, it is fizzled out for whatever reasons. And I think eventually,
right,
the mud is really on the other agencies who thought that they could manipulate Prigozhin.
Well, it's fizzled out for now, but is it over? Considering this person is still issuing statements which seem like they're challenging Putin, he seems to have even survived this kind of a challenge to Putin, and a deal has been brokered, etc. Does that point to weaknesses? I'm coming to Probal Dasgupta on that story. The point is that we have seen them say that Wagner can continue to operate in certain African nations. If you want to cut them off completely, why have they agreed to that? Why have they agreed to a pardon and an exile?
So thank you, Tamanna, for having me on the show. So if you look at the structure of the Wagner group, they say they have 50,000 on their ranks. A large part of that 50,000 has already been, has always been in Mali, Mozambique. They have been in Crimea earlier. They have had several roles to play in Africa. So that is one of the mainstays of the organization, Africa, which has always been the case. Now, when you take away about 20, 25,000, 30,000, which is deployed there, and you look at the rest of it. Recently, I just want to add to what Ambassador Trigunayat said earlier. That look, there is a there was always a registration of the Wagner army into the Russian army that was on cards in July, which Prigozhin had objected to. So this is also it is also we have all these options on the table. One of the possibilities is that they had to give an escape. They had to provide an escape route to Prigozhin so that you can have you have the registration of all of these the Wagner army into the Russian army ranks. That's one possibility. The existence of the Wagner army in Africa has been there for a long time, and they've given a good account of themselves there. Which is where once you neutralize the Wagner army, once you neutralize Prigozhin, you have a greater control over the Wagner army that exists in a ragtag bunch in Africa, or as part of the Russian army once they are registered in July as part of the Russian army in Ukraine or fighting the war in Ukraine. So I think Putin has come out stronger in this by two accounts. One, he has made sure that he takes Prigozhin out of the equation. The second thing is that they are able to disband the Wagner army in Ukraine and sort of take parts of people who are the soldiers who are joining the Russian army as part of that, and also have a greater control over the Wagner army that exists in Africa by way of removing Prigozhin and having a direct control. So it works both ways for Putin to have him out of the way and have a greater control, a direct control over the Wagner army now that Prigozhin is out. Let's remember the Wagner army started with somebody from Putin much earlier. Prigozhin has been a financer, but he's never been a soldier who's fought, unlike Price, who started Blackwater. Prigozhin has never, he's just been a financer and a businessman. So he's taken out of the way, he's given the money to stay out so that the Russian government has a direct control over the Wagner army.
One question which I think has still not been answered, and let me come to Manoj Joshi. In terms of sheer numbers, these are very small numbers to want to take on the military of Russia or take on a nation. This is 25,000 people, 50,000 by some accounts at the higher level. So what makes them so confident, and how did this threat actually grow? It was a very real threat as of 48 hours ago.
Well, you look at the fact that from Rostov on Don, these people were able to drive northwards towards Moscow. No resistance. I mean, there was no Russian army to take care of them. And as we know, there's no evidence to tell us that Prigozhin changed course because he faced resistance from the Russian army. So there was actually no resistance. There's something else seems to have happened, and this is an abiding mystery. At what point, who intervened, why, how, that he said, okay, I'm stopping and I'm going, I agree to go off to Belarus, and we'll stop this situation here. Because from whatever evidence we have, there seems to be a situation where the Wagner group was moving north and was about 150 kilometers away from Moscow, and there seemed to have been nothing to stop them. I mean, yes, and so which means that within the Russian military, there seems to be a reluctance to have taken on to take on the Wagner group, and that itself means that whatever has happened, the Wagner mutiny represents a sense of what should I say, a discomfort or a sense of unease of the Russian population with the whole Ukraine issue, because otherwise there's no reason why these guys should have been allowed to move out of Rostov on Don. Meaning they should have been resisted right there. There should have been army blockades. And as you rightly said, that 25,000 is the total number of the Wagner mercenaries. But these columns would have been what, 100,000 people or 2,000 people moving north. But yet there is no evidence that there was any kind of resistance. So my point is that there is some underlying unhappiness with the way that things are going, and there is some meaning. Maybe it's not something which is very obvious or very manifest, in the public opinion, but it's very much there, because if the Russian army is not resisting, because note that today they have shown some TV footage of Shoigu somewhere, but apparently this footage is about 4 or 5 days old. Even with Putin, we don't know where he is. So there is still a certain level of...
The amount of disinformation or lack of information coming out of Russia right now is not necessarily surprising. What at the most is surprising is the lack of retribution or immediate retribution. Let me come to Ambassador Goel with this question. Is that coming? For Prigozhin, like what has happened to many other people challenging Putin, unfortunate things happen to them. Some of them fall out of windows. So is that sort of retribution coming?
We don't know really. And where is that retribution? Prigozhin has been forgiven, and he was told that he could go to Belarus, where Lukashenko is a friend of Putin, supporter of Putin. I really do think there is something very strange about the whole thing. Prigozhin, with 25,000 fighters or 50,000, whatever it is, how could he even imagine to be able to take over the might of the Russian army, even if a huge part of it is actually engaged in the operations with Ukraine? It's impossible. And if there was actually a CIA and the MI hand behind it, they would have calculated. They would not have given up on Prigozhin like this midway. So there is something very strange. I've been looking at the whole thing. It seems incredible that somebody even thought of an operation like this. So unless in this whole mystery, like the spy novel, something comes out later on, I really would think that it was either a big hoax played by Putin and Prigozhin on the Westerners, or it was actually basically...
Why should he let people think that he's weak and being challenged? I mean,
Sorry?
You're saying it could be a hoax, but to what end? Why would Putin want to show himself as weak?
No, I don't think Putin showed himself as weak if he's able to control the whole operation within 24 hours and ask Prigozhin to go to Belarus or leave Moscow. He's not showing himself as weak. I think what is happening here is it is showing the whole thing as really either too much of trust by some people in Prigozhin that he will do what he's told, or a miscalculation. That's all there is. So we will not know what actually if both things come out.
Okay. Why are we interested in this story? Let's come to that. Why are we interested, and why is the world interested in what happens to Putin and Russia? Ambassador Trigunayat, let me come to you on this. For one, they're in the middle of a massive war which has shaken up the global economy. They're also a big supplier of crude to India right now. And Russia is a nuclear-armed nation. Is that why the world is a little worried if things are unstable, then if Putin doesn't have a complete grip?
Well, I don't quite agree that the Putin doesn't have grip. He, in my view, and I have served there and I know a little bit about it, that Putin has full grip. Everything is under control. Only thing, I think he made a strategic mistake, the way he got into this, and he was baited in to do that, and for global politics, basically. That's why. So what we are looking at today is a situation in Ukraine, and as I say, that the kind of war that is going on is frankly like a skirmish on the borders of Ukraine. But what possibly Putin is banking on essentially is that in case he has to go for a very larger conflict with the NATO countries, he's sparing his best for that. I mean, that is what strategists would do. And because he has many enemies in the West, and that's what there, and he is not hesitating to use all what he has once there is a direct conflict between the two with the West, essentially. So this particular incident saga could be unfolding in whichever way. Of course, this man was Putin's creation. So to say, he's called his chef or whatever. But at the same time, this man has become a hero for the simple reason that wherever he has been deployed, he has very successfully come out of it, whether it is Bakhmut, Mariupol, or Crimea, or elsewhere. So that's why people in whatever Manoj was saying about the evidence. I mean, what evidence one saw was on the streets, the people were welcoming him, going around and all. And getting out of Rostov, frankly, what baffles somebody is that it's a district headquarters of the army also at the same time. So it is possible that by doing this, Putin may have also made, I mean, another choice exactly what to do with General Shoigu, the defense minister, and General Gerasimov, who have not really acquitted themselves very creatively.
What happens next is really the question. Probal Dasgupta, if you can hear me clearly, do you think India should be worried? How should we track this situation, and what would you be looking for?
So that's a good question. I think India has treated the entire the conflict, the time of the conflict, and the entire period in a way where India has shown itself to be clearly talking in favor of peace. So I think that is something that India has done. Over a period of time, India has positioned itself in a way that it is not seen as an entity, as a power, as a nation that favors one or the other, but it talks more in terms of peace. So I think India has been making the right choices all along. I don't think this is a cause of worry for India, to answer your question. What we are waiting is what are the outcomes of this adventure that Putin had marked on. And as I see, as someone just mentioned as well, the numbers were too less to worry Putin. However, given the fact that somebody actually challenged Putin is something that would be interesting to see how it pans out. Given the fact that, and I know from some sources that there were about 3,000 odd troops on that highway to Moscow, and as you mentioned earlier, they didn't pose any challenge. The fact that he's been given a safe route, the fact that Putin was challenged, the fact that Sergei Shoigu and General Gerasimov have been seen in bad light would probably see would probably result in some changes and reshuffle within the Russian system. But Putin has seen far greater threats, in different forms earlier. I don't think this is going to really.
He's a master at deflecting these attacks. Manoj Joshi, do you think it makes a difference to the Ukraine-Russia war at all?
Yes, I think it makes a difference. I think now, this is the problem. It may have been, as I think Suresh suggested, it's kind of a complex scheme whereby which Putin was trying to smoke out his enemies, in the sense that creating, because if you look at this, all said and done, at the end of the day, no one has died. Prigozhin claims that 30 people were killed by initial Russian army attack. So if you look at this, it's been a fairly costless, meaning that no one has been arrested, no one has died. It seems to have ended all well and all that, that kind of stuff. So in that sense, it could have been an attempt by Putin to kind of smoke out the kind of geopolitics and politics that is around him. On the other hand, if indeed what we have seen, because it is so fantastic in some ways, if it need all those events were as what we are hearing, then it definitely shows that Putin's foundations are very, very shaky. They're very shaky. And if a warlord can rise, there are apparently many other small military companies which the Russian army is trying to incorporate into the forces. The future, I think, looks pretty shaky, and therefore, from the Ukrainian point of view, I think that it certainly aids, because I think if we are looking at the war ending this year, I don't think that's the thing. Meaning, it may just carry on. But the point is that it definitely looks at, when you look at the Russians, their systems to me seems to be definitely shaky, especially since the Wagner forces, who had played a very significant role, because the Russians were not doing too well till the Wagner got into the situation in Bakhmut, and they were able to, by sheer loss of sacrifice of lives.
Is this a favorite of the boss throwing a fit temporarily, or is there a real challenge to the person on top? If you put it down in very human terms, maybe that's the story, and we'll have to wait and see whether Prigozhin pays for his challenge. He's continuing to issue statements. He now says, I don't want to overthrow the government in Russia. I just wanted to warn Russia, etc. So let's see how this all plays out. Anyway, very interesting in world politics, and has a lot of repercussions for the Ukraine-Russia war, for the supply of oil, and so much more. Thank you so much to all of you for joining us on the show this evening. We'll take a very, very short break, but a lot more coming up on the other side. Stay tuned.